This week's episode of Invaded reveals a lot of information, and I'm very thankful once again that this is a 13-episode anime series, because if this was a traditional 1-core or 2-core, if it was a 2-core, it'd feel too long, too dragged out, and if it was a traditional 1-core 12 episodes, we'd have one episode to not only chase down the chief, figure out why Kiki was the battery and what was going on with her dream worlds, but then you'd also have time for the epilogue. But no, if you have 2 episodes, you can absolutely do it, so thank you for this being a 13-episode series, because elsewise the pacing would have felt very rushed, and this episode, among many episodes, we've had plenty of time for these characters to truly sit down and think and really ponder what everything means, and I have to say, this episode was great. And I know the anime community, I know the internet in general, anything that's obvious for the viewer will be criticized as there was no twist and it felt underwhelming. But if you take into consideration that for these characters, this is the real world, they don't get to see magic anime directing that makes things very obvious for the viewers watching, but of course, because these are characters a part of a real environment for them, they're not going to be able to see certain shots that are directed to show, ooh, that John Walker, he has white hair, or ooh, the chief, he also has white hair. For these characters, when they see a mysterious masked man, all they're gonna see is a glitchy face and a robe and a cane and things like that. Of course, for the viewer watching, we would always have these lingering shots to set up for who it actually is behind the mask, but we never knew why, and we got a great understanding, or at least a start of an understanding of what this man was truly going for all along, and the idea of the magic number of 7, the idea of a different killer each day of the week, almost like it was a job, and how he was basically becoming a god, using an ability and just harnessing Kiki for such a weird reason that we still don't know fully, but it definitely is on the more psychopath-driven route of basically wanting to create a serial killer cycle of a new world, maybe trying to create something, a dream within a dream, a world within a world, something to that nature. And I mean, if you're literally convincing people to kill and to do your bidding like that, saying to do it on a specific day, it definitely feels to me that the only reason you would do something like that is if you were crazy alongside the killers who are doing a lot of the killing. So I quite like this episode, especially because the first half was it was hard to follow in terms of the visuals because there was just a storm coming in every which direction, which was amazing because, I mean, once you realize you're within your own well, that's gonna obviously cause a lot of disruptions. It was quite interesting to see how they were dealing with that and how, you know, we were setting up for something that was like, okay, things are getting bad. It looks like John Walker's been working with someone we wanted to be a friend here. Like, yeah, he may have drilled his own head, and yeah, maybe he was a little bit of a psychopath, but it's looking like things are rather bad. And then, once again, we realize that John Walker's just been manipulating pretty much everyone, and he realized that this man was a threat because of his little bit of a disease. Because honestly, this obsessive need to count and basically use math in such a way, it would drive anyone insane, which, of course, really goes to show why he was driven to drill a hole in his head and things like that. So it was quite interesting how they were definitely tying up a lot of loose ends over this episode to give character motivation, but also explain why all these characters, why it linked back up to our main character Sakado, what was going on there. It really just felt like this episode, it was trying to make sure that things felt like they were planned from the beginning, and you absolutely can tell they were. It's not like things were just randomly written as they went on. There was clearly a direction going on, and as the director and team has stated, by the time you reach the final episode, everything will click down like it's a perfectly laid out puzzle, and you can definitely tell there's been a lot of planning and structure going on in this anime. I thought the idea of just building up to have, like, they're trying to crack the code, and should they be able to escape, they absolutely will be able to solve the case and say who this absolutely is. Having Hondo within still the kind of year time span that he was a part of, but now he's trapped in this desert, which I love the idea of basically the previous well that we saw with the whole lightning bolts and things like that. It's the same thing, but now it's just obviously the storm coming in, so they tried to basically find that capsule where she would be still in there, which I thought the idea of linking it all back up to the previous wells of what we've seen and how just the characters have behaved before, I thought was really clever because nothing about that, like them finding her or whatever, felt like an asshole. It actually felt like there was structure. The idea of this obsessive being able to count things, and because he stopped having this kind of obsessive behavior once his drill was in his head, but once he obviously entered the well, it kind of reactivated it. It gave everything a logical explanation on how they were coming to these conclusions and retracing their steps and figuring out where to dig, because that was all based on previous wells and what we've already come to experience with some of these characters and their behaviors and things like that, which obviously makes sense why John Walker was terrified of certain characters being in certain situations, so setting it up so there would just be more murder, things like that. And I quite like seeing on Hondo's side as well, because she basically was given a book of goodies, right? I mean, one person doing so much detective research for a year in his world, right? Obviously, there's only so much he can do alone, and maybe if he was still there before being sucked away, maybe he would have come to the same conclusion. But once you give another mind to kind of take a look at your own work, you can easily come to the conclusion yourself, or at least get another starting point that maybe you didn't see coming that the other person might have seen coming, something like that. And I love just seeing how, because these two characters know the criminals in their own world, because they've really kind of understood their psyche, they're able to manipulate situations either by getting them to kill themselves or by having a friendly chit-chat about, hey, have you had any weird dreams lately about this guy? It's like, I love what they're doing with dreams because it really does feel like something that you don't see explored too much, because when you dream, if you remember your dreams, it can feel like an eternity. It can feel like a lifetime. It can feel like so many things are happening because your brain is organizing just ideas and memories throughout your days and weeks and months, if not years. So that's why it can feel so long despite us only sleeping for 8 hours or something like that. So to have it be explained and just kind of like explored the idea that a dream for them can last a year or a month or days, it can just feel like it's been a very long time, and how the idea of the drill into the head wasn't something that was just like, oh, look at Hondo or something like that. She survived a drill in her head that's going to have no lasting impact. It had a very lasting impact because she was able to remember things because of the drill in her head. And it was really nice to see how they're just kind of building that up to reveal the identity, and because of everything that was happening, they kind of had like the perfect storm, despite it possibly kill them. It was nice to see how they're able to use that to their advantage to be able to solve everything at hand, especially because had the chief actually been watching during a lot of that, he would have realized that he needed to unplug the power right then and there. But unfortunately for him, by the time they all got out, his identity wasn't revealed. And I have to say, I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with it, because all along I've said since very early on that I don't care who the identity is, and it was very obvious that it was probably going to be the chief or a character we had no experience with. And the fact that it is someone with such power, I mean, it does make a lot of sense. There's plenty of criminal stories you can read where someone was doing a lot of horrible shit and it was someone who you would least expect. Because for these characters, they're a part of a workplace. There's no reason for them to truly believe that their boss is going to be the one who is, dressing up and causing all these killings, because for them, it's not an anime story. For the viewer watching, of course it is, because we believe, like, oh, it's an ominous figure, it has a very similar identity to this other character, it's gotta be him, or it's gonna be a complete curveball. And sure, I know anime fans, they love those curveballs, but what would that really do for the story by randomly introducing a character we have never seen before, or putting it on a character who really was never designed to be this mysterious murderous killer? By having a character who's literally in one of the highest positions to manipulate not only criminals, but his own people, for his own godlike plan, like, honestly, that seems like the best route. And all those shots that were very obvious of who John Walker's identity was, these characters have never had that. Like, honestly, like, I think that's something that anime fans definitely need to take into consideration, that when we see shots that are very directed as like, ooh, look who that is, we get to see the white beard or the white ponytail, things like that, those characters don't see that. That's all for us. Like, that's the entire purpose of good directing, is to give the viewer not only the anime characters' perspectives, but also perspectives from, like, that godlike view, that we get to see things that the characters don't. If we were a part of this world, we wouldn't have come to the conclusion that the chief was John Walker right then and there when we looked at him, because we wouldn't believe this is an anime story. We would believe these are real people, and we would only see John Walker as a glitchy, mysterious figure that pops up in these wells. But if we're watching it, of course, we're going to come to that conclusion a lot sooner. And that's why I'm perfectly fine with him being the obvious answer, because his motivation, the ideas of creating the world in 7 days by using a different killer, and how it's all connecting in such an intelligent way, why wouldn't I love that? To me, Invaded has been a really perfectly laid out puzzle, where I guess you could say it's a 13-piece puzzle, but I don't think it does it justice with how many pieces are truly clicking. It's almost like 1,000 or 10,000 piece puzzle, where there's a lot of ideas at play, a lot of the killers, a lot of the personal motivations. You have the John Walker, the Wells, the Kiki, and, what's going on with her, and just why is she being used as a battery? I mean, we've been speculating on it for a couple of weeks now that she's probably is a battery, and it totally makes sense, because if you're having all these dreams within a dream, she has to be the reason why things are happening, not to mention after kind of everything that went down with the whole beat down crew. I mean, she went missing shortly after being saved, so it's not surprising that someone within the organization kind of kidnapped her and threw her in to basically use. And the fact that he's basically, it seems like he wants to use her as a weapon, like without using the wells, we don't know. I mean, we have seen within the dreams that she was able to just knock everyone out in her hospital bed, so maybe that's what he's planning to do, try to escape with her by knocking everyone out and maybe starting again or something like that. There definitely is a lot of possibilities, and there's, of course, a few mysteries we still have left to uncover. Of course, we need to understand what drove this man to want to be a god creating these like psychopathic world and dreams, or maybe he was trying to create his own world where he could escape to. You don't really know. There's definitely some questions to definitely explore, but I think in this episode, it just feels like the past 5 have really been exploring and explaining a lot of things in such a great way that it just feels rewarding. It doesn't feel like a random story that had one idea and just kind of expand that to 13 episodes. There's a lot of ideas at play, and I'm really happy to see how the cast have truly evolved to feel like more than just Sakato is an important character. Like, it's really nice to see how many characters have really grown and kind of had an important role or a relevant role, or just, have actually grown to have an interesting personality at the end of the day, which I was actually worried about midway through the show, because it definitely felt like, no, I wasn't as interested in some of these other characters, but seeing how it's all kind of come together by the end, I'm interested in a majority, and it'll be interesting to see how they can actually stop him, especially now that we're outside of the wells. What are they going to do? Is it going to be like an idea of like shifting reality and making that into a well? Like, they have a lot of possibilities, because Kiki has a lot of disabilities that we don't understand totally as of yet. I have to say, I love this episode as always, but let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think, and theories and speculations of where it might go next week? Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.